Today I want to share with you 5 ways to ferment almost anything. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, if you've been on this journey with me for a while, from moving from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, you've probably experimented with different types of ferments. And fermentation really does have kind of a broad, or it's a broad umbrella term for many things, because culturing dairy is a process of fermentation, making sourdough starter and sourdough bread is a process of fermentation, as well as making what we think of those typical ferments like sauerkraut. And today I wanted to talk with you about the 5 ways that you can basically ferment anything. And I think that this will be especially interesting to any of you who have maybe struggled with trying to ferment things in their traditional way. And what I mean by that is, take sourdough starter, for example. Have you struggled with trying to capture those wild yeasts with just flour and water? And might there be maybe some other things, maybe some other ferments in your kitchen that can help you get that sourdough starter going and then allow you to have a sourdough starter made maybe in a way that's a little untraditional in terms of what you've thought of in the past, but that's going to get that sourdough starter going and then allow you to make a successful sourdough bread? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do to kick off that sourdough starter, not to mention how to ferment other things as well. So say in your traditional foods kitchen, maybe you're making kombucha. Maybe you're making a water kefir or a dairy kefir. Or maybe you're culturing yogurt. You're taking milk and culturing it and making yogurt. Or maybe you already have a sourdough starter going as well. All of those are ferments that can basically fill in essence, in many ways, for each other and for fermenting other things. Now, in the world of ferments, you have your yeasts and your good bacteria. And some ferments lean one way or the other more. Kombucha is sort of a combination of yeasts and good bacteria. Cultured dairy, like yogurt, leans more on good bacteria. Sourdough starter generally will rely more on the yeasts, and that gives it that nice kind of soury fragrance, as opposed to the stronger, almost sometimes people describe it as acetone, or like a nail polish remover smell, when too much of the good bacteria takes over in your sourdough starter. But all of them are leaning one way or maybe both ways, in the case of like a kombucha, to using either yeast or good bacteria or a combination to create their sense of ferment. But what can you do if maybe one ferment that you're making isn't going so well? Maybe it's not working out so well. And the one that I'm really going to focus on here is because this is the one ferment that I get a lot of questions about, and that's sourdough starter. Did you know that you can take a little bit of your kombucha, you can take a little bit of your yogurt, you can take a little bit of your kefir, whether it's your water kefir or your dairy kefir, and you can replace that for some of the water that, or liquid, you know, on the part of yogurt it's going to be a little thicker. You can replace some of the liquid that you would use in making your sourdough starter with one of those other ferments to just help kickstart it, to give it a little jump. So if you've got your sourdough starter going and you find that it's just not bubbling the way you want, it doesn't seem to be very effervescent, and you really want to help it along, you can try putting a little kefir in there. You can try putting a little kombucha in there. All of these other ferments can more or less help each other to sort of jumpstart the process of encouraging yeasts and encouraging good bacteria to grow. And the same goes for anything else that you want to ferment. Say you want to make a soda. Now I've showed you how to make a ginger bug and how to use that ginger bug to make, there's no bugs. Well, I guess the good bacteria are the bugs, but how to make that ginger bug and then how to use that ginger bug to make various types of homemade sodas. But if your ginger bug is struggling, you can use some kombucha. You can use some kefir. You can use a little yogurt. If you've got a good sourdough starter going, you can even mix in a little bit of your sourdough starter. This was not an uncommon process amongst our traditional food ancestors. Even the beverage Kvass, which is made with generally stale rye bread and maybe some dried fruit or a little fresh fruit, it was not uncommon for mothers and grandmothers, you know, whomever were making kvass, which is like primarily a Russian and Eastern European fermented beverage. They would add in a little sourdough starter if they had it, and to help kickstart the kvass. And say you wanted to make some homemade condiments, maybe a salad dressing or a homemade ketchup or a homemade mustard, and you really want to help kick up the probiotic nature of these. I often have shared with you that I like to add a little whey sometimes to certain of the condiments that I'm making. And the whey is very rich in good bacteria from yogurt. But you could also add in a little bit of kombucha or a little bit of kefir. You could even mix in a tiny little bit of your sourdough starter. Dilute it with a little bit of the water that you're using to make these condiments. So it's fantastic to know that all of these different ferments can help you in terms of creating fermented foods. Say you have some beans and you want to ferment them. Add a little kombucha, add a little kefir, add a little yogurt, add a little bit of diluted, take a little bit of your sourdough starter, mix it with water, or mix it with a little vinegar and a little oil, and mix that up, and then let your beans ferment. So there's so many options. So always look around your kitchen when you're starting to ferment something or you're struggling with a ferment. Look and see what you have that's doing well. Is it your kombucha? Is it your sourdough starter? Is it your yogurt? Is it your kefir, water or dairy? Or might it be one of your fermented vegetables? Maybe a little bit of that sauerkraut juice. All 5 of these ferments can help you they can help each other, but they can also help you ferment other things, like making a soda, like making a salad dressing, like fermenting beans or other foods. So always keep that in mind, even though, yes, kombucha is made for making kombucha. You know, yogurt is made for making yogurt. Sourdough is made for making sourdough bread. Yes, that's their specialty. But it doesn't mean they can't help you ferment other things. Now, if you'd like more information about this wonderful world of ferments, be sure to click on this playlist over here where I show you how to make kombucha, sourdough starter, kefir, yogurt, fermented veggies, all of it. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.